for coming. It's a very special day in the day of the college, not an ordinary day. We are hosting today one of the most well-respected, influential urban and architectural historians in the country, actually in the world, Professor Robert Fishman. This is also an extremely special moment for me. I have known Robert Fishman for over 20 years. He was on my dissertation committee, and so he's been my mentor for all that time. And I'm not able to remember how many letters of recommendation he's written me for this thing or another. But anyway, thanks for everything. So Robert Fishman is currently Professor Emeritus of Architecture and Urban and Regional Planning at the University of Michigan, where he spent 22 years of his career, I just learned. Previously, he was at Rutgers. So he's a professor at the Taubman College of Architecture and Urban Planning, which is my alma mater. He's an internationally recognized expert in the areas of urban history and urban policy, and he has authored several books that are regarded as seminal texts in the history of cities, including books that I include in my course I teach, my doctoral students now. So these include Bourgeois Utopias, The Rise and Fall of Suburbia, as well as Urban Utopias in the 20th Century, Ebenezer Howard, Frank Lloyd Wright, and Le Corbusier. His many honors include the 2009 Lawrence Gherkins Prize for Lifetime Achievement by the Society for American City and Regional Planning History, the Walker Ames Lectureship at the University of Washington, the Emile Lorsch Professorship at the Taubman College at Michigan, and many others, the Public Policy Scholars Program at the Wilson Center, and the Cass Gilbert Professorships at the University of Minnesota. He's held several visiting professorships, lectured widely, of course, and received his PhD and Master of Arts in History from Harvard University and his Bachelor of Arts in History from Stanford University. So he's going to talk to us about his next book project, which I'm not sure whether this is the title. Is the title of the lecture the same?
Well, it's
You'll
certainly
tell
the
us.
tentative title.
Tentative title, The Second Urban Revolution. And this is part of our Designing the Past lecture series this year. Again, please let's thank Robert for making the trip from New Jersey to here. I think we are all looking forward, very exciting, to hearing what you have to say. And I should not forget to say that this is part of our AGOR Endowed Lecture Series. So thanks to Bob Hughes, who is not here today. Thank you. Thank you, Rob.
Okay, and of course, thank you, Sonia, for such a generous introduction, and for the invitation. As I've mentioned to people, it's actually quite convenient to have one of your former students as a dean, and but more than that, for what you've accomplished as a scholar and administrator. I don't think those of you who are teachers already will understand how much we are part of our students. And our students are part of us. I still remember when I came to Michigan, and you came to my office, and said, well, you were interested in suburban history. Fine. And then you said, well, I'd like to do a comparison of Cleveland and Sophia. And I said, what? And she did it and so much more. So again, thank you for everything that you've added to scholarship and to the field of architectural education. Okay, well, a young woman is arriving in Chicago. Near the turn of the century, she's on a train from the small town where she's spent her whole life. She's full of hope and apprehension at this radical transformation, at this first encounter with a city, with a world that's so different from anything she'd ever experienced. Her name is Carrie Meeber, and and some of you might recall that she is in fact a fictional character, the title character of Theodore Dreiser's great novel of Chicago and New York, Sister Carrie. And I think it's so amazing about Dreiser that he opens this book with what I take as the archetypal moment in modern urbanism, in some ways in modern culture itself. That arrival moment, the shock of this new world, the possibilities that arise. Multiply Carrie Meeber by millions, and you have the world of 19th and 20th century urbanism. Multiply her by literally billions. This is Dhaka and Bangladesh. And you have something that no one even in the early 20th century could have imagined, which is the urbanization of humanity, the transformation of the human species from being primarily a rural species to an urban one. That, to me, is the great story, the great narrative really of our time. And I call it the second urban revolution. Why second? Because the term urban revolution was invented by the anthropologist V. Gordon Childe in the 1930s to denote essentially the invention of cities more than 10,000 years ago. And this history of cities, going back to Babylon, or this, shall we say, rather imaginative rendering of what Babylon might have been, in our courses in history of urban form and so on, we dwell on the great cities of the past, like Athens or Kaifeng. But when you look at this remarkable chart, you see that for almost all of this 10,000 years, the percentage of people living in cities was amazingly small. You can hardly see that maroon line that, of course, goes back to the invention of cities itself. It's only starting around 1800 that the percentage of people living in cities globally begins to become even noticeable. And then suddenly there's that amazing turn upwards. That is really, this chart and understanding what it means is really my subject this afternoon. Let's see here. And what I'm trying to do in this book project is to try to see if it's possible to tell this whole story of the urbanization of humanity, which really, as I take it, begins. I'm not going to take you back all the way to Babylon. Begins around 1800. To tell it as a single narrative from the time not so long ago when the humanity, as I say, was primarily rural, to the second urban revolution. Some of you will recognize this amazing model of the city of Shanghai in the Shanghai Planning Museum. As I say, if you think about human experience, it's this transformation, I think, that is the most critical. Wars have come and gone, regimes have come and gone, and yet this urbanization has continued and maintained its force. What is that force? And I want to try to draw on the power of narrative, not only to, the story that connects the present with the past, the power of narrative to to focus our attention on the important, what is important, the power of narrative to select, because I'm not going to be able to tell the whole story this afternoon or ever. One of my favorite quotations is on the subject is from Ernest Hemingway, who knew something about narrative, and he said, "You can leave anything out if you know you're leaving it out." So I'm going to be leaving out quite a bit, but that's, as I say, part of this power of narrative. And like every good narrative, I'm old-fashioned enough to believe in grand narrative. We're not supposed to do grand narrative anymore, but I'm doing it. But also, a story should have a moral, and the moral of this story is humanity's escape, humanity's liberation from the agrarian era. And I'm going to try to explain why this era dominated, after the invention of agriculture, which came about 12,000 years ago, until the last 200 years, was dominated by hunger, by want, by oppression, by ignorance. The urbanization of humanity, to me, is the escape of humanity from what you probably heard the anthropologist Jared Diamond once said, that agriculture was humanity's worst mistake. And I'll try to explain what that means and why this urbanization of humanity is and has been the way out. It's a strange way out, so we say, because as we'll see, it comes through some of the most chaotic cities, overcrowded, oppressive in their way. There are many paradoxes in this story of liberation that I'll try not to ignore. This is the Lower East Side around the time when Carrie Meeber was coming into the Lower East Side of Manhattan, when Carrie Meeber was coming into Chicago, the densest area ever recorded. So this liberation was a trial as well as a liberation. And I think that's important to remember, because your generation is going to be living through the flood tide, the literal flood tide of this urbanization process. The future of urbanization, just demographically, will come in Africa, in sub-Saharan Africa in the 21st century. And it's kind of scary to think that these areas will double, will triple, will quadruple in size. And one of the morals I draw from the story is we've been there before. At every stage of this urbanization of humanity, there was this intense chaos and struggle just to survive. And somehow, everyone, all the urbanists predicted disaster. Somehow, humanity has found the way out. And that, to me, as I say, is the moral. If you like stories with morals, that's the moral that I'm going to be coming back to. This great poem by W.H. Auden expresses that struggle. It's, this is just an excerpt. In unlighted streets you hide away the appalling, factories where lives are made for a temporary use like collars or chairs, rooms where the lonely are battered slowly like pebbles into fortuitous shapes, but the sky you illumine. Your glow is visible far into the dark countryside, the enormous, the frozen, where, hinting at the forbidden like a wicked uncle, night after night to the farmer's children you beckon. That, as I say, that's my whole message. But let's go back to the chart. I mean, I'd love to stay with Auden, but let's go back to the chart. So, what does what does it mean? And I want to say that I've learned a lot from economic historians. They're the one group, for some reason, who are not afraid of grand narratives. And even though the figures that they use, including, I'm sure, the figures in this chart, are kind of questionable when you look at them too carefully, they nevertheless base these wonderful theories on them. So, as I said, I've learned a lot about a kind of basic structure of human history during the agrarian era, and I downloaded this chart so long ago. I have no idea who actually did it, but as you can see, it's labeled "World Economic History in One Picture," and believe it or not, it fulfills the claim, in the sense that it explains something, that this agrarian era was characterized by something called the Malthusian trap. Now, that's named after the English economist of the early 19th century, Robert Malthus, who proved, as he thought, that food supply, humanity being what it is, excess births will always exceed increased food supply, so that even if farmers improve their yields, the result is just going to be more people, more mouths to feed, and we're back in semi-starvation. So humanity is caught in this inevitable trap. And that was true in 1800. It had been true for 10,000 years previously. And suddenly, the amazing thing is, it's not true. Population increases, but food supply increases even more. The number of people increase. The output per person increases more. Something that seemed impossible, and in the time of Malthus, suddenly becomes the key to what modern life is. So the issue is, just what exactly is happening right here. The economists label this the Industrial Revolution. The idea that for some reason, a whole lot of really amazing inventions cluster at that point and begin to change human life fundamentally. And the city, the urbanization is a kind of resultant of that, especially as agriculture becomes more mechanized. I mean, it's plausible, but even the economists understand that it can't be the whole story. Here's another chart of. These charts are sometimes called hockey stick charts. So the problem is that these inventions, this is the spinning jenny, Hargrave's spinning jenny, the origins of the Industrial Revolution and the cotton industry, they're almost embarrassingly crude. Why weren't they invented 1,000 years, 5,000 years before? And in fact, they were invented. Here's the same principle in Sung Dynasty China, 500 years earlier. So there's clearly a whole lot more going on than invention and the clustering of invention. So we come back to this question: what is happening at this point of inflection? And I should say that at least some economists, most economists, try to stay away from cities because they're just too complex to be modeled. But at least some economists have identified the city, urbanization itself, not just as a resultant of this upsurge in wealth and production, but as at least a partial cause of it. And the most important of these is the Harvard economist Edward Glaeser. This is his book, Triumph of the City, How Our Greatest Invention Makes Us Richer, Smarter, Greener, Healthier, and Happier. So there. And what these theories are based on is something called agglomeration economies. I love that word, agglomeration. It seems to echo the phenomenon. And partly it just means, in a very simple sense, if factories need coal, it pays to have them all together, or clustering around where there are good facilities, railroad and ports and so on, to provide coal. But more importantly, agglomeration means that when you cluster production, the ideas spread from one factory to another, from one shop to another. Agglomeration is also points to the key aspect of urbanization, which is communication, what another economist once called overcoming the friction of space. So that's fine, and I must say I like the book. I love people who praise the city and so on. Great. The problem that I see with Glaeser is, if cities were so great, why are we not celebrating the triumph of Babylon? Why are we not overjoyed at the contributions of Teotihuacan and Tenochtitlan and so on? Why does it take this long? If the secret is agglomeration, density, and so on, you had it all in Babylon. Why does it take this long? So the answer to that, for me, lies with two figures who Stephen knows have been very influential for all of us. The two great urbanists from early 20th century with Geddes, and throughout the 20th century with Mumford. And they had, I think, a very a more nuanced, complex, even contradictory view of the city than Glaeser and the agglomerationists. Patrick Geddes understood very well that, to start off, he was actually Mumford's teacher in many ways and inspiration. Geddes understood that if you really look at cities, especially if you go back to their origins, what you see are armed camps. It was certainly an evil day in human history when armed bunches of thugs, let's put it directly, understood that if you could establish a secure base, like a castle or a walled area, you could exploit the real weakness of the farming population, the peasant population, because they were necessarily scattered in small villages. They couldn't coordinate a response. So you could go after them one by one, and then, and have your secure base. So the very structure of an agrarian world, led to this expropriation that we call history, civilization, and this, as I say, is one reason this the agrarian era was so destructive, because what it meant was that what in our own era has become a very lively interchange between small towns, between small towns, small cities, medium-sized cities, and so on, was reduced. Everything was about exploiting the agrarian population. The villages, there was no incentive for the villagers to improve their farming techniques, it would just mean more in taxes and rents. The medium-sized cities that sometimes were centers of civilization were reduced to being just ways of funneling the surplus from a large region to the capital. And the capital was, I mean, it was grand and so on. We study the wonderful monuments of capitals, but essentially the capital was the headquarters of exploitation, the source of continuous corruption and war as different thugs vie for the prize of exploiting a settled peasant population. And Mumford, understood, his sequence of, based on Geddes, was almost a kind of inevitable sequence under the circumstances of the agrarian economy, where the only way you got richer for these thugs, at least, was to take to exploit more land. So the polis, the human size, as he says, the living core becomes, if it's successful, becomes the metropolis, the megalopolis, the tyrannopolis, the parasitopolis. In other words, simply parasitic on these, on the people who are really creating wealth, which was the farmers. And finally, the necropolis, as he said, the city of death, fire-scorched ruins, shattered buildings, empty workshops, heaps of meaningless refuse, the population massacred or driven into slavery. And in fact, when you think about the history of empires especially, that is exactly what happens, and happens again and again. That is the a kind of rendering of the Malthusian trap as history. But Mumford certainly understood that cities were more than that. That they had that the ruling elite had gathered together these remarkable skills, merchant skills, craftsman skills, by reaching out necessarily as they did for raw materials and food. They brought together, they brought into focus diverse peoples. They created diversity where the village was essentially one kind of person. So in effect, operating simultaneously behind the city, behind the city of expropriation, is this other city, that is the city of liberation. And through most of the agrarian era, it's subordinate to the exploiters. But again, to come back to what in the era of urbanization, the balance shifts. So here to me is the most remarkable statement of the really profound truth behind this agglomeration theory. And Mumford is trying to refute Plato and Plato's idealistic but very limited utopia in the Republic. And Mumford writes, when Plato turned his back on the disorder and confusion of Athens, he turned his back, unfortunately, on the essential life of the city itself, with its power to crossbreed, to intermingle, to reconcile opposites, to create new syntheses, to elicit new purposes, not predetermined by the petrified structure itself. That to me is just such a profound statement of what how cities liberate, how they can take us out of the Malthusian trap and into an era of freedom. So I would put it in this way: cities accelerate history, and by that I mean that the whole tragedy of the agrarian era was that there were continual inventions and innovations and wonderful ideas and so on, but they were coming too slow. They were, sooner or later, the Parasitopolis becomes the necropolis, the empire falls, everything is destroyed. Cities in the era of urbanization accelerate history. They accelerate communication, new ideas, new inventions, so that finally the forces of progress, I'll be bold enough to use that term, the forces of progress overcome the terrible weight of the agrarian age. That, to me, is what cities are all about. Now, I want to explain this in somewhat greater detail by juxtaposing just what happens in these liberating cities. By juxtaposing two thinkers who are not usually juxtaposed. One is the Jamaican economist Arthur Lewis, who taught mostly at Princeton in his career, winner of the Nobel Prize in he basically invents development economics in the 1950s, and the other you should know. So, what is the juxtaposition? We'll start with Lewis's theory of economic development with unlimited supplies of labor, 1954. So what does he mean by unlimited supplies of labor? What he means is that he's thinking about the situation that obtained in so many areas, including parts of the Caribbean where he was born and grown up. Agricultural productivity was starting to rise, population was starting to rise. What that meant was there was surplus, what we would call surplus population on the land, what he calls people with zero marginal utility, meaning that in a family, if someone leaves with a family farm, the productivity is so great that even if people start to leave, agricultural production doesn't go down. So that means that these migrants are a kind of gift to the city. They contribute when they're in the city to the urban economy. Their marginal utility in cities is much, much higher, certainly higher than zero. So this migration from countryside to city is a tremendous force for this larger liberation, whatever the experience of it was. Okay, I explained that here. So what is Jacobs' contribution to this? It comes, I believe, in a book that she never really got enough credit for, which was The Economy of Cities. And it's often occurred to me that if economics were as open to an outsider like Jacobs as planning and architecture were, she would have won 10 Nobel Prizes. But instead, the book was largely ignored, but not by us. So, what is her basic theory? Her theory is an urban economy has both a complex division of labor and a freedom to innovate. The freedom coming out of that spirit that Mumford had described. Such an economy creates new work. And that's the key thing. A real urban economy creates new work. And she even has this formula, D for the division of labor plus additional work equals a new division of labor, a more complex division of labor. She uses the example of a New York dressmaker around 1900 named Ida Rosenthal, who decided, at that time, dresses included, the function, as it were, of the brassiere, and she decided that maybe it would be better if you separated the two, and so she invents the brassiere as we know it. Not high tech exactly, but for Jacobs, it's an archetypally urban innovation. So every new thing, like the brassiere, leads to another, more complex division of labor. Some of those divisions of labor lead to others. So there is this branching formation of new work. And I think you can see how the two of them are coming together. Lewis's theory is all about migration from city to countryside, and Jacob's theory is that within these cities, within these innovating cities, there's new work for the immigrants to do. So to me, some of this new work isn't exactly wonderful, boys earning pennies by sweeping away the horse manure for a middle-class person. But others, other kinds of new work. This is an amazing lathe done by a man named Henry Maudsley, who adapted some of the techniques from clockmakers and woodworkers in London for metal work, and begins a whole chapter in the Industrial Revolution. Some of it is very revolutionary. But the basic formula is the formula for what I call maximum urbanization. It's that moment when, which changes from city to city, from country to country, and so on, when the migration from the countryside to the city is at its maximum. And the cities themselves are capable, are driven to create new work. That is what explodes 10,000 years of the agrarian oppression. That is the essence of what the city has given to us. The issue, which will take up a whole large part of my book, is that the moment of maximum urbanization is also the moment of maximum chaos, where country people are flooding into the city to the great resentment of the people living there. They are disoriented, as Carrie Meeber is initially, by this completely weird and strange environment. The urban environment itself literally begins to collapse in terms of housing, pollution, and so on. So this moment, as I say, of maximum urbanization is also the moment of maximum chaos. And that, again, that is the complexity of the story that I'm trying to tell today. And that is what connects Lower Manhattan around 1900 with the informal settlements. This one happens to be outside Johannesburg. Moments of maximum urbanization that are moments of maximum chaos. So in terms of my task, my self-imposed task, narrating the second urban revolution, what I'm going to do is to seek out these exemplars of maximum urbanization and to tell the story of a series of them. So as I see it, first of all, the protagonists are not individual cities, but systems of cities. It takes more than one city to really explode. More than one city, in a given era. So I'm going to start with Edo and Tokugawa, Japan, and I should say I'm not going to go through all of these this afternoon. I just want to give you a sense of what the methods and questions that I'm going to ask as a kind of prelude to the urbanization. The next big section, London and the industrial north, London as the imperial city of the age of urbanization, that moment of dramatic break. The American cities from 1850 to 1950, again, this maximum of urbanization combined with a leap forward in terms of industrialization. and the scale of industrialization. This amazing machine transfers coal from ships to boxcars. And finally, Chinese cities, I think for obvious reasons. In our own time, the Chinese city has been the overwhelming example of maximum urbanization on a scale never seen before. So these will be the sum of it. And I just want to, rather than attempt to go through these different cities, I just want to very quickly explain the questions that I'm going to ask of each of them. The first of all is the one what I call morphologies of growth. In other words, cities have to change. The whole idea of urban form was for this enclosed, hemmed in by walls, a city that really could not grow, resisted growth. The challenge of the second urban revolution was for cities to learn how to grow. London, New York, the current plan for Beijing and envisioning a kind of city that would grow and dominate a massive region. The morphologies of growth. The second is city finance. What Brodel, the great historian Fernand Brodel, called the control of capital over time and space. Again, we kind of take for granted that, of course, a major city is going to have banks, finance. And that is because, I think, in this age of urbanization, capital has to be mobilized. And mobilized over time, meaning loans that extend over years, over space, meaning providing to local merchants the ability to buy things 100 miles away, 1,000 miles away. City finance is a necessary part of this urbanization. City enterprise. That's a tough one for me because for Jacobs, there is this amazing profusion of different, of innovations happening in every aspect of urban economic life. But what I intend to do is to concentrate on two of them. One is what I call the mastery of precision. What separates the spinning jenny from the more modern machines is the ability to create parts, metal parts that are precise, that fit together, that have tolerances of 1/100th of an inch, 1,000th of an inch. So much of what we call the invention of mass production is really the mastery of precision. And that has been, as I see it, very much a contribution, and very much in the way that Mumford suggested, bringing together what the watchmakers knew, what the woodworkers knew, what the traditional metal workers knew, into these new combinations. And the steam engine very much dependent on this process of precision, leading up to, and as Sonia mentioned, I taught for 22 years at the University of Michigan, so naturally I think that the summit of everything comes to a summit in Detroit. And again, this invention of or perfection really of mass production based on the capacity of these machine tools, as they're called, to create precise parts. This is what transforms the 20th century, creates this era of mass consumption and prosperity. I love this picture of Detroit, by the way. It's all there. Okay, the other city enterprise, of course, are relevant is the city building process itself. How it was financed, how construction was organized, everything that led to the expansion of cities. And finally, is the whole thing. To me, this era, this era of maximum chaos, of maximum urbanization, I should say, which is also the era of maximum chaos, is the necessary birthplace of the whole field we call urban planning, even though it, of course, occurs mostly before planning becomes a self-conscious profession. It was the recognition that this process of liberation was crushing the people who are actually working in cities. How do you get out of it? How do you fight it? That, to me, is the question that urban planning comes back to again and again. This is one of the scenes that the fictional Carrie Meeber would have seen in Chicago. What's called, you see in the background, the Chicago stockyards, which had a really wonderful sanitation system. They just dumped all the carcasses into this thing called Bubbly Creek, and you know why it's bubbling. The picture is located. The picture is captioned, "Man standing on caked waste," and I think you know what the waste is. So this is what the early people I'm calling planners had to deal with. And to me, the key is, where do you get the resources to really address these terrible issues? And again and again, for cities of today, for cities of the 19th century, the question always is, this urbanization process is creating massive wealth. How do you tap that wealth so that it can be used to remedy these terrible situations, to make life better for the mass of people? And the 19th century city invented really two very powerful mechanisms for that. One is the property tax, and the other is the capacity of cities to borrow against future growth. That, of course, those of us who are homeowners, we all hate property taxes. But when you think about it, what an amazing way for a city to tap into increased wealth. You can't really measure, most wealth is hard to measure, but at least you can assess property and assess it pretty accurately. So the rise of property values becomes a kind of revelation of the increased wealth. The city takes its percentage, and out of that finances the necessary improvement. And the other one was the capacity of cities to borrow against future growth. It was assumed, say in Chicago in 1900, that of course Chicago was going to grow. So let's borrow every cent that we can, because we're now a city of 1 million. When we have to pay back the loan, we'll be a city of 2 million or 3 million. And the burden will be much less. So these, to me, are the two tasks that make possible the really remarkable explosion of the public realm in the 19th century city. I'm in awe of the people who, say, created the police force out of nothing, created a sanitation department, established free public schools, the wonder of the urban parks, the great bridges and other infrastructures. There's tremendous lessons, I think, in that era of urbanization. So these are the themes that I hope to make real through the discussion of these essentially 4 moments of maximum urbanization. So if you look at this chart for one last time, you see it actually projects into the future that urbanization will continue to grow. And my own hope and even expectation is that this urbanization, this urban revolution will reach its, will complete itself with a transformation of humanity along the lines of Lewis and Jacobs, and drawing on the tremendous heritage of a figure like Frederick Law Olmsted. And I take a certain, in spite of all the difficulties, I take a certain comfort, shall we say, in what's often called immigrant vigor, the way in which the immigrants themselves rose to this terrible challenge. And wonderful, a family, I think, from Italy encountering what looks like Manhattan for the first time, that, that it was largely the immigrants who built the projects that saved the city. And in this way, this urban revolution is the work of the whole urban population, the elite, the professionals, but maybe above all the immigrants who actually did the work. And so, as we look at these seemingly hopeless cases, as I say, an informal settlement outside of Johannesburg, Lagos in Nigeria, predicted to be the largest city in the world, maybe 30 million people. It's not working terribly well with only 10. There's something profoundly scary about this. But my belief, and it's only a belief, but I've given you the reasons for it. My belief is we'll get through it. We've been there before, under circumstances even worse than what the people and potential people of Lagos are encountering and will encounter in its inevitable growth. That, as I say, to me, the history of this urbanization, the second urban revolution, its mission, as Olmsted, as Mumford would have said, its mission is the mission of the liberation of humanity. And we're in the middle of it. We're in the most difficult stage of it. You yourselves will be the generation that will live through the maximum urbanization globally at a time of tremendous climate change and who knows what else. But as I say, we've been there before, and I think that humanity will surmount this and the other final challenges in this second urban revolution. So thank you.